What's up, everyone, and welcome to Movie Emporium's Flashback Reviews, where I take movies from the past, break them down, and tell you what I think about them. If you like what you see, of course, hit the subscribe button, join Movie Emporium, hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next, and comment below on any of that you watch, including this one. So, my life as a movie reviewer is to ruin everybody's good time as an adult. I am here to basically tell you you're old, and we are hitting films that we watch as kids, and now our 30th or 40th anniversaries. I'm sorry, it's just what I do. I'm kidding. As always, we know how old we're getting. It's just a fact of life. So I'm going to talk about a film called Ghost. And Ghost, of course, came out July 13th, 1990. And we all know it. We all love it, or at least most people I know love this film. It's a film that is considered a romantic classic. It's considered a horror dramedy classic. It's got some great cast in it. It really does. And it's a film that just kind of stands the test of time. There's nothing really that dates this film outside of just not having cell phones. But, you know, cell phones are always dated anyways. But it's just a film that is a good old-fashioned look into the heart of, you know, a human being, the human existence. It's about revenge. It's about love. It's about betrayal. It's about humanity. It's about people that come to grow and love each other, but do it in such a strange kind of existential crisis type of thing. And that's why I love this movie Ghost so much. You know, it's a movie that has, of course, Patrick Swayze in it. Patrick Swayze, of course, unfortunately passed away. But he's a guy that's known for doing a lot of great films in the 80s. Everything from Dirty Dancing to Red Dawn to The Outsiders to Point Break. And, you know, what can you say? He's a fantastic actor that did so much in his lifetime, but unfortunately, like I said, he passed away very, very young. It was very sad, but, you know, we all like Patrick Swayze because he seemed like a good-hearted guy. He seemed like he cared about life in general and his family and so on and so forth. We also have Demi Moore in this movie. She was also part of that Brat Pack era, which was kind of coming to a close when this movie came out. And I think she's like the little underused in this movie, but she has so much heart as her character that she really plays off well of Sam Wheat's character, which is a Patrick Swayze character. And you really feel her pain. You really feel her heartbreak because these two were just getting into the prime of their life. You know, there was pretty much a guarantee that they were going to get married. And it was such a sad thing to see, but that is this type of movie. It's using that heartbreak to gain farther and go faster and, you know, give us more of a plot-driven story. And then you have, of course, Whoopi Goldberg, who is the standout of this movie. She's the one that won the Oscars. She's the one that has the great lines. She's the one that's almost like the emotional center if it weren't for Sam Wheat. She's the one that's like the surrogate between the life and death moments in this movie. And it's just the triangle, the fact that what Whoopi Goldberg does in this movie is incredibly amazing, but we'll get into that as I talk more about these characters. So kind of going into the production of this movie, we have Jerry Zucker, and Jerry Zucker directed this movie. Now, if you're a person like me, you know who Jerry Zucker is. Very famous guy. You know, most people won't know who he is, but that's fine. It is what it is. And I'll give you like 3 or 4 movies. Naked Gun, Airplane, and the lesser known Top Secret. What does Jerry Zucker have to do with those films and Ghost? Well, he was co-director on those 4 movies as well as being a producer. When you think of Ghost, you don't think of over-the-top screwball comedies that are like a spoof of the entire genre. You think of a guy who has worked on like The Pianist or, you know, Reds, or somebody who has worked on dramatic material, but that is not what's happening here. Jerry Zucker decided he wanted to do something different. He wanted to take on a different story. And it doesn't mean he wasn't, you know, really successful in the comedy era. He really was. But like Jordan Peele, sometimes these directors like to do something different. You know, when you look at actors like Adam Sandler and, of course, Jim Carrey, it's just they want to get their directorial chops out there. And that's what is happening here. And with a script by Bruce Joel Rubin, it became something kind of unique and gave Jerry Zucker an outlet. You know, eventually he would go on to direct stuff like Rat Race and stuff like that. But I think this is his, outside of his spoof comedies, I think this is his most successful attempt at doing something different. This movie is just an incredible, heartbreaking, heart-wrenching movie, but it's so fascinating to watch. It has great villains, it has great, you know, heroes, antagonists, and protagonists. But I think Jerry Zucker just did a really powerful job with this film. I mean, of course, this movie was nominated for Best Picture, nominated for Best Screenwriting, nominated for Best Actress, Supporting Actress with Whoopi Goldberg, which she won. And I think it's a movie that holds up because it deals with subject matter that we deal with every single day of our lives. I mean, somebody is dealing with this scenario where a family member dies and they have to cope with that. And that's what the coping mechanisms is in this movie. What they're doing, though, is they're creating a fantastical approach to it where the dead person is actually still in between the living and the heaven or wherever he's going, hell, whatever you think about. But this movie had also a great production crew. On top of Jerry Zucker and Bruce Joel Rubin, you had Maurice Jarre, who was David Lean. David Lean's a very famous director, did like Lawrence of Arabia. He was a composer on this movie, and you can tell it's just a fantastic, like, bombastic score that really sets the tone. It's eerie, it's uncomfortable, but it's also like upbeat and, you know, fantastical, and it's fun and it's energetic. You have Adam Greenberg, who is a cinematographer on this movie, and he is a guy who worked on Terminator 2, Judgment Day. So he has some chops behind him. I mean, he's done a lot of other stuff, but that's like a big project to work on. That movie came out like the next year. And then you have Walter Murch, who is the editor / sound director, sound producer, whatever you want to call it. And the reason I'm even naming these people, and I know when people watch these, they want to watch reviews, is when you have a group like this. Walter Murch is very famous for doing a lot of, you know, well-known Godfather and Dog Day Afternoon and Cold Mountain, all those movies and stuff like that. He's done way more than that. But when you have a group like this, you're either going to have one or two things happen. This movie's going to complete failure, or it's going to be something like truly unique, and that's what's happening here. I mean, everybody who worked on this movie was at their A game, and it really does work as a film, and it's really emotional when you're watching it. I mean, you can watch it, you know, 20 years from now, you can watch it when it first came out. It really does hit you. And yes, there are some really cheesy moments because, you know, the 90s were full of those cheesy moments. You know, the love and romance can get a little over the top. You know, we really love that sequence with Unchained Melody and, of course, the Clay sequence, but it is a little cheesy now. It really is. Like Wayne's World with Bohemian Rhapsody, Unchained Melody is a song that kind of was resurgent in this movie because this movie was so successful. It gave that song new life, and now all people think about when they think about that song is Ghost. They don't think about with anything else. It's the same thing with Wayne's World and Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, Queen is a huge band, but nobody remembers, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody before Wayne's World. It's just how we grew up. You know, these songs that get played and replayed and re-aired. But this movie and that song are like peanut butter and jelly. They just gel together, and it just works really, really well. And that sequence shows the dynamic nature of this couple, who are, of course, played by Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze. And that dynamic relationship is why this movie has such kinetic energy. You know, we have a character played by Patrick Swayze who plays Sam Wheat, and he's not perfect. He makes mistakes, but he is a guy that has a great job, a great relationship. They have a really great apartment, kind of like in Friends, where there's no way they can afford this apartment. They must be super rich, because this apartment that they basically construct at the beginning of this movie is a multi-million-dollar apartment or condo, whatever you want to call it. It's in the middle of New York. So, I mean, you kind of have to like throw logic out the window when you think about this, because it's a really nice place. Anyways, Sam is really in love, even though he can't say it. There's a running gag throughout this movie about saying ditto and stuff like that, which means that he loves her, but it's kind of like, I know, when, you know, Han Solo and Harrison Ford. But then we have Demi Moore, who's playing Molly, and like I said, you see the romance, you see the passion there, and then they go to a play, and after a mugging, unfortunately, Patrick Swayze's Sam Wheat character is killed by the Willie character, who is played by Rick Aviles, who unfortunately did pass away as well. And it's heartbreaking to watch, because you're sitting there, you see Sam going after Willie. He doesn't know it's Willie because it's not revealed till later, and you think he's alive. You think, because you see him, you see there's mistakes all over through this movie with like shadows and, you know, footsteps, so like that. You wouldn't be able to hear his footsteps, so like that. He realizes that there's something wrong, and he sees Molly holding his body. Well, in the process, we see the light. We see the light to heaven or whatever, you know, the passing through the beyond. And he doesn't take it, and it leads into the main story of basically him having to discover why he was murdered, but he can't talk to anyone because he's dead. Nobody can hear him. Nobody hears dead people. It just, unless you're Harry Potter universe, it just, I'm sorry, it doesn't happen, but you know, with this, what this movie is. And it leads him into the discovery that his friend, who is played by Tony Goldwyn, who plays Carl Brunner, we think he's a good character. We think he's a great character, but he's a character that is very shady. You can see almost his expressions as he's looking through the lens of what he is doing. He's basically laundering money for drug dealers. I don't know if he did something that he needs to pay him back, but he's going to launder $4 million. And he's using Willie to rob Sam so he can get he has a little book that has these number codes in it that he can get in and, you know, do what he needs to do. He finds out basically throughout the process of, like, you know, the first third of this movie that basically his friend is the reason he died, and it becomes a revenge movie. Now, do I necessarily agree with everything Sam does to these characters? No, because he goes on a path of redemption and revenge. He still is successful getting to heaven at the end, but because he's not technically involved with their deaths of Willie and Carl, he still has a little bit of humanity to him, but it's still kind of questionable, which is kind of a big problem in this movie, is the questionability of his actions to the characters. He does stop the laundering. He does stop his friend from killing or from doing what they are doing, but it is questionable. So what your faith and belief and what he is doing can kind of affect your logic and thinking of the movie. But it leads basically Sam without options. He's walking through Prospect Place, which is in New York. I think it's Brooklyn or whatever it is. And he comes across this psychic place. And as we know with psychics, you know, Harry Houdini was very well versed in like debunking psychics and what they did. They were charlatans and shams. But people in the essence of death, in the essence of losing a family member, go to these people, and I'm not necessarily saying everybody does, but people go to these charlatans, go to these, you know, sham artists, and they give them money to basically give the feeling that their family members are there. And that's when we're introduced to Oda Mae Brown and her sisters. And this is when the movie kind of goes to a whole nother level to me, because Oda Mae Brown, who is played by Whoopi Goldberg, is a scam artist. She's a charlatan. And of course, Patrick Swayze, Sam Wee, is, you know, basically realizes it from the very beginning. But the connection that Sam ends up having with Oda Mae Brown really kind of changes the movie's tone and feel and how this movie is going to progress forward. And what I really enjoyed about that first segment is Oda Mae Brown is really confused about what's going on. She is so focused on stealing money from people, basically, and she has a record, which is talked about later, that when you watch her reaction to Sam talking to her, and then when Sam realizes that she can hear him, it is priceless. This is what Whoopi Goldberg does so well in this movie, is her reactions to the world around her, to this situation, to what she needs to do is absolutely insanely perfect. This is a role very similar, not in like tone and feel, but very similar to something like what Kathy Bates did in Misery, where she uses her abilities and she uses what she has that she has learned and is able to focus it in on a very powerful character. Now, Oda Mae Brown has some really great quips in here. She has some really funny jokes. I think when, you know, the scene in the bank when they're basically deactivating the $4 million account is some of the most hysterical stuff in the movie. It's fantastic to watch. But when you get to the point when she's finally starting to slowly kind of accept Sam being there, that we get into like the Henry VIII stuff, because he wants her to go talk to Molly because he can hear her, she can hear him, and that leads into some like crazy sequences of just like her trying to convince Molly that he's there. And she gives him all the information that she would never know unless somebody was there to tell her. And it does lead into some problems where Molly still doesn't seem to be convinced. But because of the situation of somebody dying, it really causes your brain to kind of question reality sometimes. So I get it. But I love the interactions with Sam and Oda Mae. I think they're some of the best in the movie. I think when they interact with one another, the chemistry and the clashing together of the two personalities really works. So Sam is he's a very level-headed guy, and Oda Mae Brown's a very outrageous, outspoken, just what Whoopi Goldberg is known for doing, especially in this time. Watch Sister Act, you kind of know where she's getting her ideas and character from. But as everything plays out, as you start seeing this movie start to unfold on to itself, you start to see all these characters. You start to see Willie starting to interact with Oda Mae, and he ends up at Molly's apartment, and it's just, you start seeing these characters interact with one another, and to the kind of conclusion at the end of this movie where Sam has basically taken the money with Oda Mae, and they've donated to probably one of the best scenes in the movie with the nuns, and they basically escape. Willie is killed because he runs into oncoming traffic because he's being tortured by Sam in the essence of scared, boo, poltergeist type style of film, of stuff. And it's a really dark sequence, and we see, I don't know if it's hell or it's something you see in What Dreams May Come with if you commit suicide and stuff like that. It's just a very dark sequence. We see these creatures with black eyes. They have eyes, but they're all black, and they make weird noises. And then at the very end of this movie, Carl Bruner is of course killed because Sam didn't do it, but he is trying to escape through a window, and he throws this anchor thing at the window, and it creates glass and breaks, and then impales him and stuff like that. And the same thing happens to Carl, and I think it has to do with the fact that they killed, and they were bad people, and they were stealing, and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much in just the movie. It's the ideas and ideologies, like I said, of heartbreak and revenge, and trust, and so on and so forth. And when Molly eventually sees Sam at the very end of this movie, and of course Oda Mae Brown finally sees Sam, it actually has a cathartic moment to it. It's the same thing, like I said, with the bank sequence. As funny and as goofy and as outlandish as it can be. I mean, think about this. A woman walks into a bank, she opens an account, she goes up to Lyle Ferguson's desk and convinces Lyle Ferguson, who's kind of an idiot to begin with, to give her $4 million that she is obviously, if you read the signs, is not necessarily Rita Miller. Rita Miller is a fake account. But when you go in and you watch the step by step, it's really confusing, because it's that would never happen, but you have to throw your logic out the window because it's such a cathartic moment, because she's taking the money with Sam, they're donating it, which is for a good cause. And then you have Carl, who is so relaxed and so on edge throughout this entire movie about the $4 million, and it's not there. And this is where Sam starts eking into making him believe that Sam is still there, even though he's dead. It's a pretty impressive sequence. And then, like I said, at the very end, when we get, Molly and Oda Mae Brown seeing Sam for the last time before he goes into heaven, it feels like such a relieving moment, just such an impassioned moment, that you look past the flaws that end up happening in this movie with the optical effects, which I'll talk about in a couple seconds or a minute or whatever. But I think that's what this movie does so well and does so uniquely, is it just gives you the ideas and ideologies of somebody who basically was cut short at the end of their life. Sam Wheat and all his doings and goings. I can't remember what I was watching, but there was a segment or a show I was watching about how our lives on this earth are very, very short, 100 years or less. And what we do with that time is how we are looked upon. And the fact that Sam Wheat is not given that much time really shows the emotional impact, but everything that he has done for Molly in this movie, the penny, the clay stuff, it really shows that Sam had a very big impact on their life. And Oda Mae Brown and Molly will always be friends. They will always be together. They will always be somebody that can look upon each other because of this lasting long moment of Sam walking into that scam psychic or whatever. And that's what this movie does so well. And just the romantic feel to it, the ideas that death can be, heartwarming, and it doesn't feel like when you die that it really feels like you're going to be thrust into nothingness. I mean, this movie has its own ideologies behind what it feels and what it's doing when it comes to death and heaven and hell and all that stuff. But the idea of, like, for instance, when you see Sam in the hospital and he's sitting right next to his body, and there's this old man that comes in and starts talking to him, you start to feel kind of sad and disturbed by it. But there's a guy that's in the next hospital bed who's sitting, they're trying to revive him, and the old man's like, I've seen this a billion times before, he's not going to make it. The guy dies, but there's no pain there. There's no despair. The guy, unfortunately, goes up to whatever heaven or whatever it is, but it's like so refreshing and so it gives you like a warmth and a comfort, but it's so awe-inspiring to watch. And it's really funny how you watch a movie like this that's about a ghost who's basically trying to course correct everything that has gone wrong for him with his friend. And you have moments like that. You have moments like just Sam sitting there quietly watching, Molly, or you have, just interactions of just how desperate he is to, not have Molly be entangled with his friend after he knows what's happening. It truly is a remarkable film. It really is. It's pretty impressive when you watch it. And this is, like I said, this is a film that I should never have watched when I was a kid, because there's some very disturbing moments. Like I said, the impaling sequence of Carl, just like, the scary, it's not really scary now when you're an adult, but when you're watching like the kind of the weird, there's moments where, like, as he's starting to learn that he's dead, when he's like in his bed and there's like an angel statue that is kind of prevalent throughout this movie, is in his bed, or when he's starting to see like the afterlife and see all these people, it can kind of become horrifying for a kid. But I think it was just a movie that I just enjoyed watching. I don't know. It's really strange. But like I said, some of my favorite sequences in this movie is we have Vincent Schiavelli, who many people know the face, but they don't recognize movies he's been in. And he's been in stuff like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. He's been in stuff like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He's been in other movies. He did pass away, as many people have done in this movie. He has an incredibly important role that's not necessarily a huge role, where Sam basically has found a way, or discovered a way, to kind of use the world to his advantage, because you can't touch anything when you're dead, especially if you're a ghost. You're going to pass through the object. And there are sequences in here where he gets scared because he's passing through a door, or he's passing through a body, and he actually can see the inside of the body, inside of the door. It has that weird effect feeling and that weird sound design, which Walter Murch designed and stuff like that. And Vincent Schiavelli has been like the train man, where in The Matrix Revolutions or Reloaded, where he has been kind of going back and forth, and we learned about his past with like how he was pushed from the train onto the train tracks. And he basically teaches, kind of like Morpheus, Sam to move objects with his mind. You can't touch it with your body because there's nothing there. It's like when Morpheus goes, do you really think that's air you're breathing? It's the same thing here. It's like, do you think you're wearing these clothes? Do you think you're, moving, do you think you're breathing? And he is able to teach him how to move objects by using your, everything in your will and power. And it becomes important because he's going to use that against Carl. He's going to use that to a full effect. He uses the idea against the cat on Willie, who ends up scratching him. It's a really impressive thing to watch. The only thing that bothers me about that sequence is we get to the point where the Vincent Schiavelli character is freaking out, and he hits the cigarette machine and all the cigarettes come out. And then he's like, oh, I wish I could have taken a drag. And then he looks up and he's freaking out on Sam again. I'm like, is this him just kind of completely mentally breaking down and forgetting everything that he's taught Sam? Is this, just him being him? I mean, it doesn't really specify. It's like the whole, drug dealing situation where it doesn't really feel cohesive a lot of ways. I don't get it, but I mean, just overall, I just really like what Vincent Schiavelli does in this movie. As insignificant as he can be in this role, he still gives an emotional punch to the movie. So a really cool cameo in this movie is when Molly goes to the police station and she tells about Oda Mae Brown. She learns about Oda Mae Brown's past, and we see Stephen Root. Now, if you don't know Stephen Root, he played Milton in Office Space. He was in Dodgeball. He's an actor that's been in a lot of movies that you'll just come, oh, I know that guy. It's the way things work, but he's been around forever. He's been around since the 80s and stuff like that. And it's interesting to see him take a dramatic role, because you're used to seeing him like do broad comedies and stuff like that. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But see, it's cool to see Stephen Root in this movie, just kind of doing the police sergeant or police captain thing, and he's trying to calm down Molly and trying to get her to see reality, even though this is not reality as a suspect or a whole. So I mean, that's pretty much it on the take of the movie itself. Like I said, the music is pretty awesome in this movie. Everything about this movie just completely works in such a strange, like, cohesive, cathartic way that you never really see coming. When you have like I said, when you have a cast like this that includes an Oscar winner who's doing some amazing work, it's a pretty powerful film to watch, and pretty unique in its take on aspects and, you know, ideologies of what you believe and faith and so on and so forth. And yeah, I mean, Ghost is, you know, it's a classic film. It really is. The fact that it's 30 years old is I mean, I don't know. It's crazy to think when you go back and watch these movies, and the movies that stand up to the test of time, like Back to the Future and E.T., there is a very strange feeling about them, how they have stories that can be played in any era, be filmed in any era, and just work. I mean, you would tweak, like, for instance, in this movie, you have the optical effects, which are not good. There's a lot of goofs and a lot of, you know, for instance, when Sam listens to the Carl character talking to the drug dealer lords or whatever, and you see the cameraman in the reflection of the computer, and when it pans up, you can actually see the camera pan up and stuff like that. There are many shots like that in the movie. But like I said, like Back to the Future, there are optical effects and, you know, visual effects that just may be good for the time, but just don't work now. Like, for instance, like, there's a woman who passes through a gravestone, and the gravestone, she like fades, but then she reappears, like not really fading, but it's like the way to get her through is that through the optical illusion. It's the same thing when, like, you know, Sam is, you know, being passed through by an object. He kind of like looks like he's out of place, like they green screened him in or something like that. So there are things like that that don't work, but overall, Ghost is a great film. If you haven't seen it, I think you really should. There are people I know that don't like this film, which is perfectly all right, because, you know, I don't like certain movies that a lot of people like. It's just the way it is. But I think Ghost just works on many levels. I think what Jerry Zucker and Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore and Whoopi Goldberg and Tony Goldwyn and Bruce Joel Rubin and all these people that worked on this movie, they made a movie that was special. And like I said, it's a great movie. So but that's it. That is my take on, of course, Ghost. Happy 30th anniversary. I hate the fact that I feel no, I'm kidding. But anyways, yeah, so let me know in the comments below if you've seen this movie, what's your favorite part about the movie. Like I said, there are many great sequences in this movie that I didn't even talk about, because there's just so much good stuff in here. But anyways, if you like this video, hit that like button. If you disliked it, you know, it is what it is. But also hit the subscribe button to join Movie Emporium. Hit that notification bell at the top to find out what's coming next. But otherwise, we'll see you guys on the next video. Peace out. What's up, guys? Thank you so much for checking out Movie Emporium. I really appreciate it. If you want to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification button and the bell at the top. Find out what's coming next for Movie Emporium. Also, check out these 2 videos. They're amazing. I think they're awesome. I think you'll enjoy them too. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.